It started on a sunny Tuesday morning. I was sitting on the edge of my dock, coffee in one hand, fishing rod in the other. Quiet, calm, not a sound except the gentle ripples of the lake and the birds in the trees. That lake? It's mine. Came with the property I bought after years of working nonstop. No loud parties. No blasting music. Just me, a bobber, and the water. About 50 yards across from the far edge of the lake is a row of homes. Cookie-cutter, perfectly trimmed lawns, all tucked into a tight little HOA-run neighborhood. Their properties border the lake, but they don't own it. They get the view, but that's it. Still, it only took a few fishing trips before I noticed something odd. Every time I'd set up on the dock, one particular house's curtains would flutter. Then a face would pop out behind them. Staring. Watching. Not waving. Just scowling. I didn't think much of it at first. Some people are just nosy. No big deal. Until one afternoon, I came back to my cabin to find a letter taped to my gate. No envelope. No stamp. Just printed paper with a bold heading. Violation of HOA Community View Standards. It went on about unsightly water activity, unapproved fishing, and excessive presence on what they called shared visual amenities. I laughed out loud. Shared what? The lake is on my land. Bought and paid for. I don't share it with anyone. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with a regular neighbor. I was dealing with a Karen. A few days later, I was back out there with my rod, casting out into the calm water. It was peaceful, until two sheriff's deputies pulled up near my driveway. I saw them step out of their cruiser and walk toward the dock. One of them called out, "You the homeowner here?" I nodded. They were polite, professional. One of them said, "We got a call about a suspicious person fishing on HOA property." I raised an eyebrow. Suspicious person? You mean me? They glanced at each other. I walked up to the house, pulled out my folder, and handed them a copy of the deed. Highlighted in bold was the lake. Entirely inside my property line. Both officers looked it over, nodded, and said, "Looks like this is all yours." They apologized. I wasn't mad at them, they were just doing their job. But as they left, I saw her. Karen. Standing on her back porch, arms crossed, phone still in hand. Watching. That was the moment I knew this wasn't going to be a one-time thing. Over the next week, I got more letters. More notes. Each one with new complaints. Littering, even though I never left a single piece of trash. Noise disturbance, though I wasn't playing music or even talking. Unauthorized dock activity, which made me laugh, since it's my dock. I ignored them all. Until I noticed a small security camera mounted on a pole, just across the property line, pointing directly at my dock. I couldn't believe it. Karen had actually installed surveillance to watch me fish. At first, I was irritated. Then I thought, if she wants a show, maybe I'll give her one. But not the kind she expects. That's when I got an idea. A very petty, very satisfying idea. See, I'd been thinking about getting a boat anyway. Something small. But now I wanted something that made a statement. Something big enough to sit in the water all day and block the view from Karen's window completely. I started shopping online that night. Not for just any boat. I wanted one with a wide frame and a tall back. Something perfect for creating a floating wall right in the middle of the lake. And once I found it, I hit buy now without hesitation. Because if Karen wanted to stare at my lake all day, I was going to give her a front row seat to the back of my boat. The boat arrived a week later. It was even better than I imagined. A wide pontoon with high rails and a full canopy, clean, solid, and quiet. The kind of boat that wasn't just made for relaxing, but perfect for blocking a very specific line of sight. I took my time setting it up, cleaned the deck, checked the motor, even gave it a name. Nothing flashy. Just called it Private Waters. Fitting, right? On the first day I launched it, I didn't say a word. No music. No celebration. Just eased it out onto the lake early in the morning, right after sunrise. There wasn't a ripple on the water. Just the gentle hum of the motor as I guided it into the perfect spot, right between Karen's backyard and my dock. I dropped anchor. From that angle, all she could see was the big canvas back of the boat. No lake. No dock. Know me. Just a wide, flat surface blocking her million-dollar view. I brought a folding chair, a cooler, and my rod. Spent the whole day out there. Didn't even fish much. Just relaxed in silence, drinking iced tea and reading a book. I didn't need to look back to know she was watching. Later that afternoon, I took a break and rode back in to stretch. That's when I saw it, an email from the HOA sitting in my inbox. Subject line, Urgent Lake Activity Notice. It accused me of deliberately obstructing neighborhood scenery and violating community view-sharing expectations. Whatever that means. They also added a line saying my new water structure may need to be approved by the board. Here's the catch. They have no jurisdiction over my land or the lake. My property was never part of the HOA. The border ends 50 feet before my dock starts. I checked it all before I even bought the place. So, I sent a reply. Short and simple. Asterisk, thanks for your concern. The boat is within my rights and on my private property. Have a great day. Just no threats. No drama. Just facts. But Karen doesn't like facts when they don't work in her favor. The next day, a new sign popped up at the edge of her backyard. Bright red letters on a white board. Do not disturb lake residents. Be respectful. As if she was the one being disturbed. That afternoon, while I was out on the lake again, she came outside. Loudly talking on her phone, pacing back and forth near the edge of her yard. I didn't say anything. I just leaned back in my chair and raised my sunglasses. Watched her through the reflection of the water. She shouted something, couldn't make it out. Then went back inside. The next email came later that evening. This time from an actual lawyer. It said the HOA was exploring legal action to protect the interests of the neighborhood and that my use of the lake could be considered in violation of visual peace. Visual peace? I didn't know that was a thing. Still, I forwarded that letter to my own attorney. He laughed. Said there's no legal claim here. They'd be laughed out of court. He suggested I keep documenting everything and reminded me that I had every right to enjoy my land however I saw fit. So, I did exactly that. In fact, I started going out earlier. Watching the sunrise from the deck of private waters. Sometimes I brought breakfast. Sometimes I brought my laptop. I even added a little solar panel to power a small fan and light. It was peaceful. Karen? Not so much. One morning I caught her trying to measure the distance between her fence and the waterline. Another day she stood at the edge holding what looked like a clipboard, squinting hard in my direction. Whatever she was planning, it didn't matter. Because every minute she spent staring, stressing, and scheming was a reminder that no matter how many complaints she filed or letters she wrote, she couldn't do a thing about the view she lost. A few days later, things took a strange turn. I came out in the morning, ready for another peaceful ride on the lake, and noticed something odd. Karen's patio furniture, usually facing the water, had been turned around. Completely. Like she'd given up looking at the lake altogether. At first, I thought maybe she'd finally accepted it. Maybe the fight was over. But by lunchtime, I realized she wasn't done. She was just changing tactics. That afternoon, a man in a white pickup truck showed up at my gate. Said he was a lakefront consultant. I asked who sent him. He smiled and handed me a card with a business name I didn't recognize, then said, "We were told this lake might need compliance assessment for shared access." Shared access? I asked again, who exactly sent him? He mumbled something about concerned community members. That was all I needed to hear. I didn't let him pass the gate. I told him, kindly but firmly, that this lake was private property. That there was no shared access. That no HOA authority extended onto this land. He nodded like he understood, but before he left, he took a few pictures. I didn't like that. So I installed 2 more security cameras, one at the edge of the dock and one near the trailhead where my land meets the public road. Just in case. By now, I could feel Karen's frustration boiling over. Her little campaign had failed. She couldn't force me off the lake, couldn't get the police involved, and couldn't reclaim her view. So she did what Karens do best. She tried to stir up the neighborhood. The next HOA newsletter was something else. A whole section dedicated to lakefront disruptions, warning residents about non-member activities, and encouraging them to report any suspicious behavior near the water. I wasn't named directly, but come on. Everyone knew who it was aimed at. Funny thing was, it backfired. A couple of residents from her street stopped by my gate the next day. One guy, Mark, said he was sorry for all the drama. Said he never had a problem with me fishing or using the lake. Another neighbor, Lisa, even asked if she could rent a small section of the shoreline for a wedding photo shoot. I told her she didn't need to pay anything, just to give me a heads up and respect the space. She smiled and thanked me. Word started getting around that maybe Karen wasn't the hero she claimed to be. That maybe the lake drama wasn't about neighborhood harmony, but about one person not getting her way. And it didn't stop there. I got a notice from the county shortly after, a formal inquiry about a recent complaint filed against me. The reason? Alleged construction of unpermitted dock structures and floating property. I knew right away it was her doing. No one else cared enough to make that kind of fuss. Luckily, I had everything documented. Photos, permits, deed copies, even drone shots showing the property line and how far the HOA land really stopped. I sent everything in. 2 days later, I got an email from the county saying the complaint was closed. No violations found. Another strikeout for Karen. But even after that, she didn't stop. One morning I woke up to find her standing on the edge of her yard again, phone in hand, clearly taking pictures of my boat. She stayed there for a good 10 minutes. Then she walked back inside, never looking up once. That's when I got the idea. If she wanted to treat this lake like a war zone, maybe I'd add a little more personality to the battlefield. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't confront her. I just upgraded the boat. Ordered a custom wrap for the back of the canopy. Big, bold letters in bright blue across the canvas. Private waters. No HOA zone. Visible from her yard. Clear as day. I didn't need to say a word. The lake said it for me. A few mornings later, I heard the sound of a drone buzzing overhead. It wasn't mine. I stepped out onto the deck, looked up, and sure enough, there it was. A little black drone hovering above my lake, dipping low, circling the boat, then swinging over toward my house like it was surveying a crime scene. I didn't touch it, didn't sweat it down. I just stood there, arms crossed, and watched it record whatever it was trying to find. After a minute, it zipped back in the direction of Karen's yard. Subtlety was officially gone. She'd gone from letters and phone calls to drones and fake consultants. All because I had the nerve to enjoy a peaceful lake that she thought belonged to her eyes. That afternoon, I checked the neighborhood app, the one some of the nearby residents used to share updates. Karen had posted something new. A long-winded rant titled, "The View We've Lost." She called my boat an eyesore, accused me of destroying community values, and suggested that certain neighbors were intentionally damaging the HOA's reputation. There were no names mentioned, but the picture she attached, taken clearly from her yard, showed the rear view of private waters, bold letters and all. Some of the comments under her post surprised me. One person replied, asterisk, "Pretty sure that lake doesn't belong to us." Another wrote, asterisk, "It's on his land. Why should we tell someone what to do on their property?" Then someone asked the real question, asterisk, "Why do you care so much what he does if it doesn't affect you?" Karen didn't respond. She just stopped posting for a while. That evening, I brought the boat in early, took a walk around the lake, and noticed something strange at the edge of her yard. A row of potted trees, new ones, set up like a natural fence. Looked like she was trying to grow her own wall to block me out now. I almost respected the creativity. But I wasn't done either. I decided to throw a little boat warming party, not a loud one, not a crowd. Just me, 2 friends from town, some lawn chairs, and a speaker playing soft jazz while we grilled burgers on the floating deck. We didn't shout, didn't blast music, didn't cause a mess. Just sat out there watching the sun go down, enjoying a cold drink and the breeze. By the time we packed up and returned to shore, I caught a glimpse of her, curtains pulled back, peeking out. Only this time, she wasn't angry. She looked deflated. Like the battle wasn't going the way she thought it would. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. This one was different. It was from the county zoning board. Apparently, a complaint had been filed about improper watercraft usage and floating construction. It cited codes I'd already researched months ago, the same ones that clearly say recreational boats are legal on private waters, and as long as nothing is permanently fixed, no permit is required. I wasn't worried, but I was annoyed. Karen wasn't just watching anymore. She was trying to weaponize every system she could find. She wanted the county to punish me. She wanted to win in paperwork what she couldn't win in person. So, I did what I always do. I sent in the documents. Proof of ownership. Photos. Zoning language. A copy of my property boundaries marked in bright red. I also attached screenshots of her neighborhood post, the drone footage, and the earlier lakefront consultant incident. A week passed. Then another. And then I got a short email. Case closed. No violation found. But what really made my day was what I read next on the neighborhood app. One of the other HOA board members, someone I hadn't even spoken to, posted an open comment. She wrote, "If Karen spent less time filing complaints and more time minding her own business, we'd all be a lot happier. The lake belongs to him. End of story." It got dozens of likes. Karen didn't respond. But the next time I walked past her yard, the potted trees were gone. Her chairs were turned the other way. And for once, the window blinds were shut. A couple weeks went by, and for the first time in months, it felt quiet. Peaceful. No more drone flyovers. No new letters. No fake inspectors showing up pretending to assess the lake. Karen had finally gone radio silent. Even the HOA newsletter skipped its usual community concerns section. I figured it was over. Until I got a call from the county land office. The woman on the line was polite, but you could hear hesitation in her voice. She said there had been a new inquiry filed about my property, specifically regarding lake access and ownership history. She asked if I could confirm some boundary points, just to help them clear up confusion. I asked who submitted the inquiry. She paused, then said it was filed anonymously but came attached to a request from a law firm. One I'd seen before, in the footer of Karen's previous threats. So now she was trying to go around me and poke at the county records. I told the clerk I'd be happy to resend all my documents and reminded her that the lake falls entirely within my land. She thanked me and said she'd follow up soon. I hung up the phone and stared out at the water. Still calm. Still mine. But that call lit a spark in me again. I'd played defense long enough. So I got to work. I called a surveyor, one I knew from back when I first bought the land. Good guy. Professional. He still had the original layout on file. I asked him to mark the property lines again. Not just digitally. I wanted physical markers. Posts. Signs. Stone borders where the lake edge met the invisible wall between my land and the HOA-controlled neighborhood. And I wasn't subtle about it. The crew showed up the next morning, neon vests and all. They walked the perimeter with stakes, hammering invisible orange flags. One by one, they outlined the entire border, including the spot Karen had always claimed was shared. By the end of the day, the message was loud and clear. The lake was mine, and there was no confusion about it. But I didn't stop there. I added one more detail. Right near the dock, facing outward toward the neighborhood, I posted a large wooden sign. Cleanly carved, professionally finished. Private lake. No HOA jurisdiction, no trespassing. Violators will be reported. I even added a QR code that linked directly to the public county land records showing my ownership. Just in case anyone got curious. The reaction? Immediate. That same evening, Karen came storming to the edge of her yard, phone in hand, snapping pictures like a tourist on her worst day. She paced back and forth for a solid 10 minutes, then vanished inside. The next day, I saw a new post on the HOA's private forum. Someone forwarded me a screenshot. Karen was calling my sign aggressive and divisive, and claimed it created an us versus them atmosphere in the community. This time, nobody backed her up. One neighbor wrote, "He has every right to mark his land. Maybe if we'd respected that sooner, we wouldn't be in this mess." Another chimed in, Honestly, I'd fish every day too if people kept harassing me for doing nothing wrong. Karen didn't reply. The thread ended with silence. But even then, I could tell she wasn't done. Not really. The next time I went out to the boat, I noticed something strange on the shoreline near her yard. A bunch of small decorative mirrors hanging on her fence, all tilted upward toward the lake. Like some bizarre art installation meant to reflect the sun directly at my boat. It didn't work. The angles were off. But that's how petty it had gotten. While she was wasting her time with mirrored wind chimes and HOA gossip threads, I was enjoying the water. My lake. My rules. Every now and then, I'd see her peek out from behind a curtain. Just a sliver of her face, watching. But she never came down to the yard. Never yelled again. And that's when I realized, this was her new routine. She'd lost the fight, but she still needed to watch. Still needed to be involved, even from behind glass. A month went by. The water was still. The air stayed quiet. For the first time since I moved in, it felt like I had full ownership of the peace I came here for. The funny thing? I wasn't doing anything different. Still fishing. Still floating on the lake. Still sipping coffee out on my dock most mornings. But something had changed, and it wasn't on my side of the lake. Karen had vanished. No more yelling. No more letters. No more county complaints or drone buzzing over my boat. Her backyard stayed empty. The chairs were gone. The patio umbrella folded and stored. Curtains drawn all day. Some neighbors said she was just taking time away from the stress. Others said she might be planning something big and quiet. But I wasn't losing sleep over it. I'd spent months defending what was already mine. And I'd won. Still, part of me knew that when a control freak like Karen goes quiet for too long, it usually means something's coming. That something showed up one morning in the form of a real estate agent. A white SUV pulled into her driveway. A tall man stepped out, clipboard in hand, and walked the perimeter of her backyard. He took photos of the house, the fence, the edge of the lawn facing the lake. Then he made notes and left. It didn't take long for the news to spread. Karen was putting her house up for sale. No announcement. No HOA meeting. No farewell post on the app. Just a for sale sign hammered into the ground the next morning. It didn't make me celebrate, but I won't lie, I felt a quiet satisfaction. It was never about making someone leave. I didn't want revenge. I wanted space. Privacy. And now, the person who had tried the hardest to strip all of that from me was packing up her chaos and moving on. But the twist came 2 days later. That same real estate agent returned with a client. A young couple. They walked around the property, smiled, asked questions. Then, as they looked out over the lake, I heard the agent say, loud enough to carry across the water. Asterisk, by the way, the lake you see? That belongs to the property across. But the view is still one of the best in the neighborhood. He pointed toward me. I waved. The couple waved back. They weren't upset. They weren't angry. They didn't seem to care that the lake wasn't theirs. They just liked the view. And they respected the truth. A week later, the moving trucks came. Karen was nowhere in sight. A few workers loaded up boxes while a cleaning crew rolled up rugs and taped cabinets. By that afternoon, the truck rolled out of the driveway and turned down the street. Just like that, she was gone. And within days, everything felt lighter. Neighbors started walking closer to the lake. A few asked if they could sit by the edge on nice evenings. I said of course, as long as they respected the space. One older couple brought over homemade pie and said, we always thought she went too far. Glad it's calmed down now. Even the HOA board seemed quieter. No newsletters. No surprise notices. Then one evening, I received a letter, asterisk not asterisk from the HOA, but from the couple who bought Karen's house. They introduced themselves. Said they'd heard bits of the lake story, and wanted to say hello without any tension. They even wrote that they appreciated how I handled things without causing a war. They ended it with one line. We'd love to be good neighbors, no drama, no binoculars. It made me laugh. The next day, I sent a small welcome basket across the lake. Some fresh coffee beans, a guide to local hiking trails, and a note that said, welcome to the quiet side. And finally, for the first time since all of it began, I sat on the dock, coffee in hand, fishing rod in the water, and no one was watching. Not through curtains. Not through cameras. Not through mirrored wind chimes. Just the lake, the breeze, and the kind of silence that didn't feel tense. It felt earned. A few weeks passed, and the lake returned to being what it was always meant to be, peaceful. There were no interruptions, no noise, and no HOA drama echoing from across the shoreline. It felt like the land finally exhaled. Even the birds seemed louder, or maybe I was just hearing them clearly for the first time in months. One morning, as I was untangling a fishing line near the dock, I noticed something unusual. A small group of people standing by the far edge of the lake, where the HOA properties ended. They weren't angry or yelling. They looked curious. 2 men, 1 woman, pointing at the water, glancing at a paper map. I watched them for a bit, then returned to my task. Probably new homeowners walking the area, I thought. But later that day, when I passed by the community notice board at the nearby general store, I saw a flyer that caught my attention. Community Development Meeting, discussing lake access and common area beautification. It had the HOA logo on the top right corner. The first I left. The same group that couldn't win control over the lake was now trying a new angle. Maybe not to own it, but to make it look like they were involved. I didn't panic. I'd already proven ownership. I'd already shut down complaints and legal threats. But something about the flyer bugged me. It was the language, vague, polite, but loaded. Beautification was one of those words that HOAs love to use when they're planning something sneaky. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday evening at the clubhouse. I hadn't stepped foot in there since Karen's first complaint months ago. But this time, I figured it couldn't hurt to listen. Just observe. I sat in the back row. Nobody said a word when I walked in, but I noticed a few double takes. The president of the HOA, a man named Dennis who had always stayed neutral during the Karen fiasco, stood up and welcomed everyone. He spoke about plans to improve neighborhood value, and how natural views could be better utilized for everyone's enjoyment. Then he mentioned possible cooperative lakefront agreements. That was my cue. I raised my hand. Calmly. Dennis nodded. I stood up, cleared my throat, and said, "Just to clarify, the lake isn't part of the HOA. It's on private land, mine. That's public record. Always has been." Silence. A few people looked down. 1 or 2 nodded. I added, "I'm open to being a good neighbor. But cooperation isn't going to come through back doors. It starts with honesty." Then I sat down. Dennis cleared his throat, gave a polite nod, and quickly moved on to the next agenda item. After the meeting, a couple of people approached me, some new homeowners who hadn't even been around during the original mess. They asked questions. Genuinely curious. They didn't want control of the lake. They just wanted to understand the history, maybe get a chance to walk around it or take photos someday. I told them the truth. I wasn't trying to be a gatekeeper. But I had to protect what was mine. After everything that had happened, you don't just open the door blindly. One guy offered an idea. Said maybe we could put together a weekend event, just one day, where neighbors could visit the shore, bring kids to see the water, enjoy the view respectfully. He even offered to bring food. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. Later that night back at home, I sat on the porch and looked out at the lake. The reflection of the moon stretched across the surface, still and perfect. The boat sat anchored where it always did, gently bobbing with the wind. It made me think about everything that had happened. The complaints, the cops, the legal letters, the signs, the silent standoffs. And yet here I was, still holding the deed, still casting lines, still breathing free air. And maybe, just maybe, there was room for peace without giving up ground. But if there wasn't, I knew one thing for sure. I'd already shown that I wasn't the one to push,